Josh is absent. I don't know if he's on a golf course or some sort of golf stream or whatever Wagners do.
And then you call me doctor because I am one.
That's a good reason. It's also why people don't call me doctor.
I'm a former single mom, stripper, felon, now keynote author and two-time keynote speaker and two-time author. And I tell the truth about how to navigate challenging personal and professional situations.
So we're all strippers on the show. Let's just get that out of the way first. And
Some of us are better than others.
a lot better. Hello, welcome once again. We've got a bit of a different lineup for this show, and I'm happy to throw in a bit of change here. So Josh is absent. I don't know if he's on a golf course or some sort of golf stream or whatever Wagners do. But I am joined by our other regular host, Mr. Sean Kester. Sean, always great to see you in the mountains in the background.
Great to see you, Dustin.
Is that the macrame or crochet? What is
Made
that?
out of like putty, like construction putty.
It's the player's putty.
Plaster, yeah, like you would use to like clean up your drywall.
I love it. Did
Yeah.
you do that?
I did not.
This whole conversation, this whole intro sucks. So we'll amp things up a bit then, and excited to have our guest on the show. So actually, this individual we haven't known for a huge amount of time, but she did come referred by one of the most interesting, colorful people that I certainly know, and probably everyone on the show as well, Mr. Dan Tyre, who was actually on the podcast, I don't know, 4 or 5 episodes ago. So if you haven't checked that episode out, please do. Dan's an interesting individual, and therefore I assumed anyone that he would intro to us would be of equal interest and significance. So, and before I do the intro here, I'll actually ask the qualifying question. So, Dr. V, like, do you want, number one, why do you go by Dr. V? And is that the way I should intro you on the show? Is qualifier, I should even say before I do your full intro.
I mean, great question. I go by Dr. V. My first name is Brenda, V-R-N-D-A. And Justin and Sean
Like
don't
Brenda
have
with a V.
like Brenda with a V, but Justin and Sean don't spend the first 5 minutes explaining how it's spelled. Y'all get to talk strategy. So I shortened it to V, and then you call me doctor because I am one.
That's a good reason. It's also why people don't call me doctor. So Dr. V, again, excited to have you on the show. Got the intro from Dan. We did a little bit of pre-call and just kind of getting to know each other and so on. But you've got a new book out now at this point, which you were kind enough to send over. Fix Your Face, Watch Your Tone is the previous, and then A Guide to Having It All Without Doing It All is the new book, correct?
Old book is Fix Your Face and Watch Your Tone.
Yep.
Here, let me help you. Old book, Fix Your Face and Watch Your Tone, Women Know What's Needed, was book number 1. Book number 2 is Unapologetically Disruptive, Hard
That's
Lessons, Simple Truths.
That's right. So, and as I said before, like, congratulations on doing more than one book. I don't know that I ever will after publishing our first one. So already we can kind of, defer something or, probably get some insights to your personality through that fact alone. But I'll let you kind of do the expanded intro there because I know your resume is long. And so give us the highlights.
Yeah, I think the highlights are I'm a former single mom, stripper, felon, now keynote author and two-time keynote speaker and two-time author. And I tell the truth about how to navigate challenging personal and professional situations.
So we're all strippers on this show. Let's just get that out of the way first. And
Some of us are better than others.
a lot better. So I think I guess first and foremost, just from a bit of backstory, like what, obviously some pretty big career pivots there and so on. What led to, not only where you are now, but led you to kind of share what are some pretty, specific, I'll term them as best practices. That's certainly not the right term for them, but some very specific subjects in these books as well.
Yeah, in my books, I tell the truth, like about what happened. And some people would consider that brave to tell the truth, but it's really to empty out my head and even up the scales. So if I have to touch every hot stove, at least let that be so someone else doesn't have to. And that's really the biggest message. And I think that many times people are afraid to talk about what they've done because of the repercussions, which are real. But, at 51 years old, there's a lot shorter time for the repercussions to come and a lot of good that can be done. And, my grandmother always told me, don't do anything that, in your life that you wouldn't do on the corner of Murray Avenue. Well, obviously, I did. I did a lot of things that I wouldn't do on that corner. And I really wanted to balance out the scales. And when I think about being on food stamps, being on WIC, being a felon, being a former stripper, having multiple marriages, having a child out of wedlock, what are all of those things weighing on the statistics of society? And what can I do to put it on the other side and even up that scale? And that's 4 degrees with the final one being a doctor. And in all seriousness, I like to be called Dr. V because there's less than 4.4% of Black women that are medical doctors or non-medical doctors. It's an extremely hard credential to get. Most people don't know another Black female doctor. And so it's a reminder to me of how far I've come and a reminder to others of the fact that we're here and they could probably expand their space and meet a lot more of us.
So, and kind of maybe describe for a bit like how that manifests through, even your day-to-day role and kind of the underlying mission to, I guess, break some of those chains out there and get people embracing that same honesty.
I it's okay if other people aren't honest, but what isn't okay is other people aren't tolerant. And if you really want to hire and diversify your sales floor, which tends to skew heavily male and heavily white male, hire a former stripper. She's sold something more valuable than whatever your product is. She's definitely set a price floor. She definitely understands, buyer personas, who's paying and who's not. She can walk around a room very quickly and identify where the money is. And she's probably going to be pretty relentless to get it.
So interesting you say that because I think the number one challenge, and we work with a lot of sales teams, obviously, is the barrier that expensive brings. And we see this like a lot with young sellers and so on. Like if you think a $5,000, fill in the blank is expensive, you're not going to be able to sell $100,000 software, right?
Right.
So what you mentioned there just really, I think, hits home in a massive truth.
Have you hired strippers before? I mean, have you sourced them, or have they been underneath you or on your sales floor before?
I would imagine they have been, considering the vibrancy of the industry. I mean, more men have been to strip clubs than all the fine arts put together when you look at a calendar year.
Do you have the actual stat on that?
I do, and I can pull it for you. It's also
I mean, on a scavenger hunt, but like that would be super interesting to me, just in terms of like the percent of the total population.
I'll find it for you.
But Sean, I think what you're getting at there is like, where do you go to look for good sales talent, which is an interesting perspective, because I don't think most founders have that or at least like where you going to look for sales talent would be a previous sales job. Selling something that looks like what I'm selling in the industry that I'm selling it to, sold to the buyer that I'm looking to engage. And that like just narrows down that focus so precipitously and frankly makes it almost impossible to get the right talent in there. So I think, that again, just such a huge kind of eye opener there.
I think that the question that I would ask, because you asked me, have I hired strippers? I think the question I would want to ask founders is how many of them have been to strip clubs and how many of them have spent money and how much money on average do you spend? And I would imagine that's going to skew heavily towards the upwards of 50%. And I would imagine that dollar amount is going to be upwards of 100, 200, 300, 400. I know my average transaction, and we're going back many years, 2002, 2003, was right around $1,000 per transaction. So when it comes to talking about money and the value of money and selling an imaginary service and a total illusion, if you can sell that, I mean, you're actually going to give me an actual product to sell with probably some KPIs and quantitative data around it. Like that's no sweat at all.
Not ever been to a strip club.
I have been to a strip club. I personally don't enjoy them very much. I'll be honest with you, and that's not a lie there. But I've not been around. The Gold Club in San Francisco was a.
Did you spend money, Sean?
I know. I have a pretty strong rule about that. I usually go there for people's celebrations, and I usually just say it's their birthday. So that's a general move. But no, I don't. I feel it's a pretty big waste of money.
Did you buy drinks?
I do buy drinks. Yeah, all beers.
Did you buy the stripper strings?
Maybe inadvertently. I don't
So
think
you did
I've
spend
bought
money.
rounds of drink before. Yeah, I've spent money there, but like not for I don't know, women.
But you did spend money,
I did spend money tomorrow.
which means you can be converted. Do spend more money.
Yeah, for sure.
He was looking for a value prop that just didn't have the right message that evening. But I've lived at strip clubs in my 20s, so I will freely admit that.
You put someone through college. Isn't that the whole joke?
Probably a lot of people.
As opposed to us being actual professionals that are developing this as a working business model to actually pay bills and thrive in a society that runs on money coming in and money coming out.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of made an assumption there. So like, what is your day job right now?
I'm vice president of innovative disruption at Lift Enablement. And my job is to find what's wrong and disrupt it and fix it and chart a better path forward. And I do that internally and externally, right? So internal customer, external customer. It's really a lot of fun. I untangle necklaces. I clean out closets. I organize things and I make clear pathways.
Did they actually have that role open when you got it, or did you help define that role?
I helped define it.
I'm just curious, like, how did you even get engaged there, and like, how did that conversation go?
Right. Well, previously I worked at a company that this company supports. They're in partnership with it. My strength has always been identifying new revenue streams, finding ways to maximize efficiencies. How can we do it better and faster? I've set up multiple new revenue streams across companies, both at Groupon and previously at HubSpot. And I'm just wired to love puzzles. I mean, as soon as we're done here today, I cannot wait to put on pajamas, get in bed, and do puzzles, like for the entire weekend. Sounds like I love playing.
Like a physical jigsaw puzzle.
Physical, on an iPad, any one you have, and putting together and matching anything you can possibly think of. It's just, my brain has always worked that way. If I'm watching,
you and my mom would get along great.
Yeah.
What are your
I'll
favorite puzzles? Puzzles. What are your favorite one?
There's actually like a puzzles app. It's called Jigsaw Puzzles. I like that.
Uh-huh.
I love to do ones that are differently shaped, like they're dolphins or sunrise octopuses, not just square, regular ones. I like circle puzzles a lot. I think they're really pretty. I like vibrant colors.
Digital puzzle.
You've never done a digital puzzle?
No, like not like one that looks like jigsaw.
My kids do them. Like my mom got my kids addicted to it because that's what she'll do when they come out or whatever. They've always got some sort of puzzle going. Like the not non-square ones, but like really complex, like watercolor flowers. To where everything is just a seizure of.
Can you collaborate on them? Like, can multiple people be working on the same puzzle?
No, I haven't seen that. That would be phenomenal.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Like
Wordle, words with friends with puzzles.
Like puzzles, yeah.
That'd be really good. Sean, if you do them online, you never spill your pieces.
That's right. And you're never losing that one piece that makes you so angry at the end.
Ever. It's very true.
So that's cool. Here's a puzzle for you. One of the topics, and really why I thought you'd be a great guest for the show, that we were talking about in the, where we're getting to know each other, was, return to work and, what I would say is just a huge amount of dichotomy I see in the market, and certainly within, the companies that we invest in, which is a really difficult topic because we've got folks that are, one organization completely on one side of the spectrum, the other, couldn't be farther from, their mentality, and, providing guidance to that, obviously informed by our own experiences, is really difficult because, every business is also different. But, you've got what I consider to be a very strong take on that. And I'd love to hear your baseline opinion around that, and then we can kind of dive in further.
I'm going to have to apologize because I found the stat and I didn't miss the front part of your question. So I don't know if you want to break and want me to give you the stat from before and then re-ask the question. I genuinely apologize.
No.
Okay. So when it comes to strip clubs, you may not realize that statistically 17 million Americans went to strip clubs. And this is way back in 1991. The number has just grown since then. And Americans spend more money at strip clubs than they do on all the performing arts combined: Broadway, off-Broadway, ballet, jazz, all of it. Yet it still carries that much of a stigma. And then I can drop down and give you the stats and cite that out.
That's nuts. And so, like, I'm just Googling, like, what the population was in 1991, you said?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we're like 250 million. So, well, for ease, we'll just call that, a quarter of the United States, like within that year, right?
Within that year, that is
within
specific
that
to a year. And just think about the impact of you're not Broadway, off Broadway, ballet, all of that combined.
Yeah.
More people are at strip clubs.
And I'd certainly agree with you just from because when I'm on any social media channel, it seems like there's someone that's doing like how was my night, so on and so forth. And so I'd say, yeah, popularity has definitely increased there, but like 20% of the population, you wouldn't get that impression based on the stigma that's attached to it. So yeah, that's nuts.
Especially when you dissect it for male versus female population instead of the whole population, and then you really look at that number.
Mm-hmm.
But your question was?
Indeed. So yeah, I think, something that came up when we were getting to know each other was, kind of the whole return to work thing. And I know you've got some strong opinions around that. And it's a topic that I feel like has almost moved into the space where it's assumed that people are returning to work. And yet, like, the organizations that we work with every day that we're investing in are very much still in the midst of trying to solve for what direction they're going to go, and or a hybrid approach and so on. And I think it's a difficult dichotomy to provide guidance to, because number one, every business is different. Number two, like, we've all got our own experiences, which did happen in a time that is not the last 3 years. And so I'm curious, just like, top line, what's your impression or your opinion around return to work in general, and then we can kind of get deeper into that topic.
Well, I'm happy to return to work when the workplace becomes safe. And I think that the biggest thing, well, women aren't safe in the workplace and they're not free from sexual harassment. 38% of women have reported experiencing sexual harassment. That's 1 in 7 women have left a job or declined a job because of sexual harassment. 60% of women have said they'd experienced unwanted sexual attention in the workplace. And in some industries, more than 9 out of 10 women say they've been harassed sexually. So if you want me to return to work, and 85% of people who have experienced sexual harassment don't report sexual harassment, yet we still have these numbers attached to it, right? From like a 15% reporting sample. Why would I want to return to work when you haven't made it safe to do so?
And so, I mean, I feel like that statement also says, like, is that ever going to be a safe environment, like, realistically? And therefore, remote work is something that is just not necessarily a symptom, but it's a response to, where an environment where a lot of people just don't feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think it was a response to a pandemic, and now it's become a rallying point for safety. And I mean, gosh, Justin and Sean, I hate to put you on the spot and make you speak for an entire sector of people, but since I'm speaking for women, and the majority of women that have experienced sexual harassment, upwards of 70% experienced it from a male, I would ask you, gentlemen, when will it be safe for me to return to work?
Yeah, I mean, my response would be, I'm not you, or I'm not women in general, and therefore I don't know when I'd be able to predict that level of comfortability.
Well, aren't you? I'm just asking about male violence and harassment.
I guess that's a good question. I don't think I have ever experienced that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my thought on it is that it can't be guaranteed, right? But there needs to be things and protocols put in place to handle when situations happen, right? And so I guess my question would be, like, what would you define as safety? Because again, like, people are going to act as people act. So you can have rules in place, you can have policies in place, and you can put guardrails and things like that. But I don't know if, a CEO of a company could just say, hey, it's guaranteed that you're going to be safe here, but they can show that there is safety in place. I guess my question would be, like, what do you would define as safety, and how would you know, how would you know that you could feel safe somewhere, right? Without experiencing it?
I think the way to feel safe is to be able to say that your company has a 100% reporting rate for sexual harassment and a 0% retaliation rate for sexual harassment. And another thing that intertwines with this is the most sexually harassed group that reports is Black women. I guarantee you, statistically, we do not make up the most segment of the workforce. So when you talk to me specifically as a Black woman, when am I going to feel safe to return to work? Well, my gender isn't the one that's doing most of the harassing, but we're definitely facing most of the retaliation and we're facing most of the trauma and incidents. And I think that, I enjoyed going into the office. I enjoyed putting together an outfit. I owned my own business for 10 years and never worked in button-up shirts or slacks because that wasn't the nature of my business. However, when I think about going back to the workplace, I need to know what I can't do at home, my home, where I can mitigate sexual harassment and prevent a great deal of it. What do you want me to do in the office that you need me physically present for? And how are you going to mitigate your own bias, right? Because I happen to be about 5'4", about 110 to 114 pounds. People describe me as attractive in a classical conformative sense. So me going into the workplace is probably advantageous. You're going to like what I look like. You're going to like how I smell. You're going to like what my teeth look like. You're going to like how I dress. But now if you flip that dynamic and I'm not as close to the colonial standard of beauty, what does going into the workplace do for my brand? So when you talk about returning to the workplace, I need to know why, and I need to know what that's going to mean for me as a woman, as a Black woman, or as somebody that's further away from the traditional standard of beauty.
And so I want to go back to something you said a second ago, which is, the 100% reporting aspect. Again, like, I don't know how you ever determine that benchmark. You know what I mean? Because no one, like, the incident happens between, let's say in this example, two people, and only they know about that incident in a certain percentage of cases. So, like, it's kind of an impossible standard at the same time. It would be my concern. So, like, that's why I mentioned, isn't that really just a rallying cry for, hey, remote work is here to stay?
I think that it is, but I don't want to set up a false narrative. Many times people that are harassing someone else or are experiencing it, it is done in a group setting. And they do tell people that it has happened. They may not issue a formal report.
I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying there's each of those.
You can always ask and say, you can send out an anonymous survey, a truly third-party anonymous survey. Have you experienced it? Did you report it? That's how we have the 85%. I think the other thing is, like, when you think about your mother and your daughters and your sisters and just the women in your life that what percentage of them is it okay to experience sexual harassment for whatever benefit you feel is going to happen in an in-person work environment? That percentage tends to be a lot different than when you talk about some woman or someone who is female in the workplace or identifies it. And that doesn't even touch those that are transgender, those that have alternative lifestyles, those that have chosen to live the fullest expression themselves in same-sex relationships. The harassment numbers go up exponentially in those cases.
So I think the other side of the coin here is, and I think this probably applies more to smaller organizations, like, where you can still homogenize an environment somewhat from a belief and a motivation and a like-mindedness standpoint. Because I think there's a point in every organization where, and we see it all the time, to where you go from 15, 20 people and everyone is like, I know why I'm here. I want to be here. I feel safe here. And then, you go past a certain point and it's just, frankly, an impossibility to maintain that homogeny of thought. And so I guess my question would be, as that further diversifies, not from a race or a gender standpoint, but from a mentality standpoint, is that, is it easier for those organizations versus large organizations? Are there solutions when you're just dealing with, organizations of a certain size, or is this just across the board? And that's a fallacy to even, think that the happy-go-lucky circle exists.
I mean, I think that's a great question. I've been part of an organization that had 4,000 plus that then doubled that number. At that 4,000 number, there was an extremely strong culture, but the culture was also critically important to the success of the company.
Mm-hmm.
As you saw transitions, change outs, and a walk back of that culture, you saw the effects and impact of that. I've also worked in a company where there's 14 people with a very strong culture and a company that had less than 10 people that needed the culture to be redefined. And I also think when you talk about like the homogeny and the cohesiveness of a group, there's a lot of value in having that disruption. Of course, and not to be flippant, the Challenger space shuttle could have greatly benefited from some naysayers and dissenters in the room. So I think that there's also a fallacy around like what really matters. What does culture look like? What does that actually mean? And when you look specifically at the homogeny of the sales floor, I mean, let's definitely, it can be an extremely hostile environment. I'm a $100 a day grinded out salesperson. I come from that background. And what always shocked me is if women close 54 cents on the dollar and men close 49 cents on the dollar, why is that homogeny present? So I think as you talk about having cohesiveness, you need to also look at where are places that cohesiveness is actually a detriment.
Yeah, certainly agreed. I think that like when we were talking before, you just brought up the Challenger, but like there's a ton of examples out there of, lack of insight into, name your segment, where that homogeny of race or of gender or of even experience has been detrimental to organizations, right? I think ultimately, anytime we talk about return to work, we get on this thread of culture. Because I feel like if you've been part of an organization where you truly had a great culture, obviously not communicated by a CEO saying this is a great culture, but by like the people saying like we love working at this organization or in being a part of this, then you know what that means. And I feel like that's the most difficult thing anytime we bring up culture is simply because you can't really define it. You have to feel it, and as one of the leaders of the organization, you really don't have the ability or the voice to say, like, we've hit that goal. The only people that can do that are is everyone that's walking through the door.
Yeah, Dr. B, I guess my question, like, safety in the workplace aside, like, do you fundamentally believe that being in an office together makes a business more productive? Or maybe we'll just talk about specifically a SaaS business, or do you feel like you can be just as productive by being remote? And this is the reason why we use this kind of as leverage to for standing up for what you think should happen in the workplace, or like, do you think that businesses can operate better if they're all in the office? So is I guess the question.
No. And in fact, the example I have where I experienced the best culture was a totally remote environment. And I didn't meet in person my teammates for over a year, as a matter of fact. I think that, I came up as a front of the room trainer and I trained in person. And then everybody switched to virtual and they're like, oh, I'm a good trainer. It's just the virtual is a problem. No, if you're a good trainer, you can train in any environment at any time. I could stand in the middle of a snowstorm and train wonderfully well. I could stand in the middle of a rainstorm and train wonderfully well, as long as you have the ability to hear me. And the skills and abilities that you need to be good at that are transferable. The skills and abilities you need to be a great employee are transferable. I actually get up, get dressed every single morning, full outfit, all the things, and I go nowhere except to my office. But when I start working at 5:30, I am 100% committed to working at 5:30. And I didn't waste an hour on a commute, so I'm not frustrated. And I didn't waste an hour on a drive home, so I'm exhausted. I'm actually more refreshed for the next day. And I'm not taking off as much time because I don't have to run home to do this or do that. If I have a doctor's appointment, I'm zipping there, I'm coming back, and I'm still completing my time. My office is not closed. So in my experience, and those of my colleagues that I'm in touch with, you actually are working longer hours. And there's a great argument to be made for additional compensation for that and more focused. Now, there is a caveat because 85% of what I had in my study were saying they were doing chores in between meetings. And that was distracting. But I think, when you're talking about remote work, the benefits need to shift. So please, no more gym memberships, deliver my groceries to my door. You'll get an extra probably 1 to 2 hours of work out of me per week and not at full cost.
But I feel like you specifically, and
Yeah.
the same as everybody else, just as far as your motivation and your experience and everything else has to go. So like, yes, I believe that you do get up at 5 a.m. and you get dressed and you're sitting there on a computer, you're super focused and you're more productive. But I do not believe that about the group of 10 brand new SDRs who have never been in an office before and just got out of college. This is their first job. And they're sitting in front of a computer in their bedroom that they're sharing with 4 other roommates who are also working remotely, and they're, hanging out and like, because I know this for a fact, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the productivity levels go down because they never got to see that. And I think, personally, I'm saying I'm never going to go back to an office because I don't need to, because I know what it's like and I know how to get my stuff done and I know, how to operate. There are challenges with not meeting face to face. There's conversations are harder to do virtually, and sometimes you don't get to like kind of pick up on what other people are saying. But I feel bad for those who've never been in an office and had that experience because they don't understand kind of what the benefits of that are. And so they do feel pretty remote on an island, especially when you're new in a business. And so I guess my point is like, I feel like you're very unique in that, and that there are other people like you but by and large, you're the minority in that, and the level of productivity you get from remote work.
Well, let me ask you this, Sean, because I love brand new salespeople straight out of college without a clue in the world. How many of those did you expect to attract anyways, regardless of whether they're in office, wasting time, afraid to pick up the phone, not making the dials, stumbling over their words versus those are at home? Do you think there's a statistically significant difference?
I think, well, my only experience is that when I hired about 35 SDRs, and we had probably about 80% or more, they would stay on. There's probably 20% for performance reasons. Otherwise, we had a really strict hiring policy, and there was a lot that went into.
I think that's probably the underlying key to that result.
Yeah,
100%. So I was going to say that, but I think for remote, it's harder because I think it's just harder for people who are first timers, especially in sales, because you're not hearing what everyone else is saying. You're not picking up on how they're doing. They're talking about objections or things like that, or hearing how software is positioned or things like that. So I think there's an innate challenge in there, which, to your point, like if you're a good trainer, you can train, right? So you should be able to go figure out how to do that. But I think there's just too many distractions with someone who is their first time and all they know in a business is they have a computer they sit in front of that also can do a million other things other than what they're supposed to be doing, right? And so I think there's a focus challenge there, but maybe hiring training is the answer.
What about the disruptions that happen, especially when you have those right out of college SDRs and you have a mixed gender workforce and someone walks by? I mean, there's tons of distractions. I'm not going to belabor the point. I will say, I think that it is definitely who you hire. And I also would suggest, and would probably be able to find evidence, that when you hire in person, there is a specific presentation that gets hired more than when you hire remote. That person that may be suffering from obesity, they don't get hired in sales at the same rate as somebody that's physically fit, but they might be fire on the phone. Same when it comes to hiring a felon. My job is so precious to me. It's 20 years later. My job is so precious to me. I am not confident enough to fail in my job, ever, because it will be a long drink of water before I get another shot as a felon. So I think when we talk about different ways to hire those that are not your standard typical, a lot of times we forget to talk about the fire and the determination and the true grit that comes from hiring outside that standard. So I would wonder what would happen if you hired a group of 35 SDRs that had never been to college, that this is their one and only shot. I would imagine they would sell the crap out of whatever you have because they wouldn't have a choice not to.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you.
Yeah.
How many felons have you hired?
That I know of, from the early days, we did booty check, so I'm not sure.
Sales. One place they don't care about a background check, they care about numbers. Thanks, Groupon.
They probably more than zero, but not confirmed. Probably a lot of misdemeanors in that.
I bet.
I've never done a background check in 5 businesses.
I appreciate. I have so much appreciation for that, because
what is it going to tell you? I mean, I guess there's certain things you want to know, right? Like, if they sexually assaulted someone before, it's probably a big one,
Good
right?
question.
Like, that's a great thing to know. But like, I don't care if you got arrested for underage possession of alcohol in college, right? And I don't think it needs to be a red flag that someone's not going to hire you for, right? Like, learn your lesson, right? But yeah, it's not a top priority, I guess.
But I was going to say, like, but the caveat to that is, like, we spent an abnormal amount of time and effort on trying to translate what was in people that we loved. That is like, hey, who are you, and how do I find more of you from a personality and a certainly skill set to a certain degree, but personality, how you respond to situations, and just like literally had a PhD research psychologist go through and create survey and create data models to find people that would fit within this environment and can do what we needed them to do. And the most interesting departure from that was we started doing a summer internship program, and we really didn't have a lot of rigor around that whatsoever. We went to like high schools for people that were graduating, colleges for people that were going into summer, and advertised at those locations, right? And so we took in, I think 8 interns, and man, what a cluster. It like just in terms of like, to the point earlier, like, hey, is this person even working? Like they've never signed into their email. They're, like, because you don't have a big, stick to wave when you're not paying anyone anything. So it's like, hey, you want to give us a call back? But like just the different results from those different approaches, I think is just such an underscore to something that I think all three of us have said that at this point. Like, if you don't have a hyper intentional focus on hiring and at least have some theories to prove and that eventually get better over time, I don't know that there's any way to create an environment that is safe, that is enjoyable, that is, that bolsters people based on, their metrics, their performance without some of the negativity that comes with the false barriers put in front of that. And I will tell you what, in startups, it is so rare to find someone that is not just putting up a job description that is oftentimes unrealistic the day after the need comes around for a role. So I think that's like an underscore lesson, like underline that 5 times.
Challenge accepted, right? Anytime you tell me something's impossible, that's what I want to try and do. I think the other part of it is, my felony was classified as theft. It was 20 years ago. In that 20-year time frame, I've gotten 1 speeding ticket. But not so long ago, I was turned down for a job. They loved me. They wanted me. I passed the background check because it's been 20 years.
I was going to ask, like, what is the...
Okay. But I also said to them, hey, on my platform, I talk about the fact that I'm a felon. I'm a former stripper. I'm a single mom. I have been on foods. I want to make sure you're comfortable with my platform because this is your company. They pulled the offer.
Really?
20 years later.
And without saying names, was this like a very large, publicly traded organization, or is this somewhere where an individual is probably still making decisions?
It's a large company that was opening an office in the Phoenix area that had its Series B, a really exciting company with a really exciting team. And it's interesting to me because they have missed out on the best employee they could have. Because I won't fail. Because when I fail, you'll never hire another one like me.
Actually, I actually might know who it is, but just based on your description alone. Interesting. That's crazy to me.
It's crazy to me.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what we were saying earlier, like as far as founders and hiring, especially at the early stage, especially around sales, that everyone's trying to look for this cookie cutter. They've done it here before. They've rose their way up the company. They're always looking for someone who doesn't want to go back and do it again, right? Like they've already gotten past the point where they have to be scrappy and make process and be the owner of that book, right? And I think to your point on having kind of non-traditional backgrounds, right? I think are excellent. Like especially at the SDR phase, right? Like what kind of background are they supposed to have, right? They're out of college. They haven't had a job before. Like you have to look non-traditional, right? And you have to find people that have done things like one of my best SDRs was like, worked at a shoe store, right? He's like a running shoe store, right? And he sold shoes, right? And like, he was just like, please, can I have a job, right? And he was hungry and like, he's just like, I know how to sell things, but like, I want to be in software. I don't want to sell shoes anymore, right? And so, it was a non-traditional background like that, or, other people were like Orange Theory coaches, or stuff like that, or, it's like these non-traditional things where you're good with people, you're good motivating, you have motivation behind you, but like, you're hungry, right? And so I think a lot of times you just can't see that because you're looking for, and we have a couple portfolio companies that's really aggravating that they keep trying to look for someone who has a very specific background, who's done it for this many years, knows that space. And I'm like, they also know too much because they're gonna like like they know too much and they're not good at selling because they're going to over explain something that should be really simple, right? You want someone who doesn't quite understand how technical it is. They just tell you what the value is and the value you're going to get from it and the solution itself. So, I mean, I think like if people could walk away with something, well, they should walk away with a lot of things from this episode, but like from a founder perspective, like hiring non-traditionals I think is really important. And also just for the diversity of the people that you have in your business, right? And being able to have different styles of backgrounds and create that culture.
1,000%. And look, you want to hire somebody that can't lose. You hire that single mom that literally had to count change on the way to the grocery store to figure out how much they can buy, and then had to filter that out and make it okay with their kids, and then had to also make sure they had gas in the car, and then is hoping the white smoke coming out of the car. Like, you want somebody that's not going to crack under pressure. You got to hire somebody that's been through pressure. And if you have no student loans coming out of college that you went to straight from high school, you definitely don't have the same amount of pressure I had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of courage for founders to do that too, because they're gonna have to do something that the optics don't look great on, right? Like they have to have said that this is part of the culture, right? Yeah, that's right. And so it's not your traditional SaaS sales organization, right? Where you've got someone who's probably an ex-athlete as the VP of sales and, a bunch of people that all look the same, right? Like the 6'2" ex-athlete, male sales VP, right?
There you go.
That's kind of your traditional one.
You can see them in your mind.
That's right.
And I also think, my son got into sales. And of course, me being me, I'm like, you're starting at the bottom. What is the lowest position they have in that company? And by the way, you need to be number 1 or 2. 3, I'll still let you in the house, but like, right? You have to do this. I'm not cooking dinner for number 3. Bring a sandwich. When you're number 1, we can go out to eat. But I think that when you look at where someone comes from, there's a lot to be said for great family values, great, wonderful, all of that, sit down at the dinner table. But when you hire someone that has already proven they're resilient, you hire someone that is resilient.
Mm-hmm. I think resilience as well as respect for money and stewardship of capital is a completely underrated trait across the board.
And every time I get a paycheck, right, it's that note. Thank you I'm in a smaller company now, for signing my paycheck I know what that's like. I've written paychecks to people before. You feel every dollar, and it's very real. And I think that if you're an entrepreneur and you are risk averse enough to throw it all out there and see if it sticks and grind, how could you stop that at your hiring? It doesn't even make sense, let alone numbers. Don't stop being risky when it comes to the most important thing, because your established seller will never sell the way you want, will never be coached the way you want, will never respond the way you want, will never unlearn the way you want, and will never truly integrate into the culture you're trying to newly establish.
Yep.
They'll just mimic what they're bringing and try to modify a little bit, including myself.
But I want to be like pretty clear and transparent to everyone who's like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll go hire someone who's not traditional. Like that takes effort. It takes a lot of effort. Like it should take 30 to 40% of your time as a CEO to make sure that the hiring practices are like that. And you always need to be hiring people, right? And finding people. And like, one of the things is like, if they're a great fit, we'll find a spot on the bus, right? Like we'll put them on there and we'll figure out where they belong later, because the opportunity cost of not hiring that great person now because you don't have budget for it for a couple more months is greater than what it's going to cost to keep them in the seat and put them in that spot. So, but I just want to make sure people understand, like, this all sounds great, right? And there's a lot of people that agree with this, but it takes a lot of work and it's a cultural change that it's from the top down in order to make it happen.
And that's why I landed at Lift Enablement, because when I was interviewing with Doug, he's like, we're going to figure out, help us figure out. You are talented and we want you. What do you want to do? What do you want to be? I was like, I think I want to be vice president of disruptive innovation. He's like, okay, what does that do? I'm like, I can tell you. I'm ready. Yeah. And he's like, great, let's do that. And for that, not only does he have my respect, he also has my allegiance.
Mm-hmm. So I do want to cover what your day-to-day looks like. And I know that, that's far too small of a lens, but like, what are, some of the things that you're working on within that role? How do you find new projects to work on? Just like, what's that overall process look like?
It's a lot of listening, right? So I'm newer to the role. So now is a great time to listen. But what do you like most about your job? How long do you intend to stay? What makes your job unpleasant? Why doesn't this work? Why can't I find that? What does this look like? So when you look at the whole go-to-market strategy, when you look at how you're developing and encouraging people, when you look at the processes and documentation, what does that look like? When I'm looking at clients, you want to design this and you want it to work this way, but the seller in me is saying no, I wouldn't do that. I know I wouldn't do that. I'm going to write this down in my notebook. So why would I put it into a CRM? Oh, I would if you did X, Y, Z. So it's really, it's kind of like you close your eyes and you walk full force through the house, and everything you stub your toe on is something I want to look at, uncover, ask questions about. And I know that sounds vague, but it in practice is very specific for me.
It actually doesn't sound vague at all to me. So basically, you're an HR department that actually does what HR is supposed to do.
Oh God, please don't make me HR. My least. Oh gosh, now all my HR friends.
I know why you're shying away, but I totally believe that's what everyone thought a VP of people was going to do, a CHRO was going to do. And it is such a bastardization of what that role could be in terms of what it is transformed into. So yeah, I mean, I love that, just overall charge of position.
Yeah, I enjoy it. Where can I make things better? And I think that's kind of a way I go through my life. That's why I tell the truth that I do in my books. Like there's not many questions that I won't answer because I want to make things better. And I believe that sharing of information is how you get there.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't think in order to do that, you have to do exactly what you talked about, which is talking to people. Like, not only why did you join, but what's it going to take for you to quit? Like, what are those things that would make this job suck? And then proactively ensuring that those things don't happen, right? Like, it's just such a no-brainer way to curate and get to a culture that everyone loves, which, we started this call with almost like the negative ramifications that happen in a lot of organizations.
Yeah.
Because this piece is missing. So I think that's an interesting thread together there.
In my experience, when you stop listening, when you don't like what you hear and therefore you stop listening, or when you don't like what you hear and therefore you categorize it as not being aligned, or when you start saying, well, that person always has something to say, that's when your culture dies. Because when that person shuts up, your culture is dead. It's gone.
What is the significance of adding disruptive to your title instead of just VP of innovation? Why did you choose disruptive? Like, what does it mean to you? And what do you think the significance is to others who are working with you?
Well, I added it because I wanted to be truthful. In the simplest form, because it's going to disrupt. I'm not looking for, if this was just a little bit better, it would be if making it a little bit better would be good, that's what you feel safe to say. That means there's a whole big iceberg under the water. And it is disruptive. The way that I approach work is disruptive. Why would you say that? Why didn't you let her do that? Why haven't you already done that? How hard do you actually think you're working? How much time would you actually have if I didn't tell anyone to spend on something else? What's the actual truth? Those are disruptive, in-your-face questions. Now, to me, they feel very non-threatening, but I'm very aware that my approach can feel very disruptive. And so I wanted to tell the truth. And there is nothing comfortable about cleaning out your junk drawer in your kitchen or that closet. I'm looking at it right now, that if you open it, everything falls out. There's nothing comfortable about the process. There's nothing comfortable about saying the closet needs to be open. There's not anything really comfortable about closing the door once it's all straightened and organized. You might feel relief, but you're not going to feel comfortable with it for a while. And I am not risk adverse.
So how do you maintain that license of trust, right? Because if you're going to go speak to people and rely on their feedback to understand where you can make the biggest impact and the biggest change, but change is also very uncomfortable. And I've not met a person in my life that doesn't abhor change at some level. So like after that happens so many times, people are like, hey, every time I bring something here, the rug gets swept out from underneath me, even if that change is for the better. How do you conduct that balance?
Yeah, for me, number one, I start with again, telling the truth to the person. This is a conversation where I'm not going to share any information unless I feel it will be positive as in the way that it impacts your career. Or I might say positive in the way that it impacts the organization.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something you need me to never share, I'm going to need you to be very specific about that. So I set the expectation up front that the information I'm collecting, I'm going to use, but I make the agreement I will not use it to your detriment. So I won't be like, she hates you. I'll be like, so-and-so mentioned that a stronger acknowledge in the front of the conversation when they bring a concern would be helpful. Can we role play through that? Right? So that's one way. I think the second way is what I don't change. What I don't change. So I am not here to fundamentally change how much you make unless it's an increase. I'm not here to fundamentally change how you work unless it's going to be an improvement over what you're doing now. And I'm not fundamentally here with the intention of managing anyone out, ever. I don't take those assignments. So-and-so is a problem. We've had him here for 2 years. We'd like you to get him tuned up or get him out. It's not my job. Your poor choices are not mine to fix. Now, if you tell me, I want you to identify if there's a skill versus will issue and coach to whichever one of those it is, I'll do that happily. So there's got to be some integrity. And many times I find myself as a former stripper, former felon, former food stamp, multiple marriages, as the one with the most integrity in the room.
Well, I would assume there's also something to be said for the hiring practices at an organization that allows a position like yours to exist.
I think it says a great deal about Lift Enablement. I think it's a phenomenal gamble, calculated risk, investment, and also just a real gutsy play. I mean, and I think those are who, not only the people who win, but who deserve to win.
So Dr. V, I know we're at time at this point. It's been a super enjoyable conversation. I do want to allow you to leave our group with some advice. And again, we deal with organizations that are, I would consider to be, at the very beginning stages of their overall life cycle, which, again, in our opinion, is the best place to be because you don't have to deal with a lot of the crap and peeling back of layers that you do when you've got 5,000-10,000 people and you haven't put these building blocks in place. So advice for putting those right building blocks in place.
Don't let your risk stop at your business model. Have it continue through with your employees. And remember that just because you make one bad choice doesn't mean the category is wrong. But take risks on your people. We all know the most valuable thing you have is not your product, it's your people. Take some risks.
Well, I think the other side of that is you're taking a risk anyway, whether you know it or not. So you might as well take an intelligent and a calculated risk on someone that could, is different than, in order to yield different results.
I think to boil it down, always hire the person that is going to be evicted if they don't hit quota. That person will hit quota.
Amen. Amen. Again, Dr. V, really enjoyed having you. Appreciate you taking the time. Great insights. If you folks are tuning in for the first time, for God's sakes, subscribe to the podcast. We have great guests on every fortnight, which if you know what a fortnight is, give us a like as well. And again, always happy to be joined by Mr. Sean Kester. And, Josh, we miss you greatly. Come back to us. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time on Cheat Code and Friends.